The decision for the SWAC MEAC Challenge to be nationally televised on ABC for the second year in a row is a proof of the further investment that Disney is making in HBCU athletics, but probably most importantly is a proof that last year's gamble paid off. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. I'm excited. Tomorrow we should have better video quality. I told y'all I'm not trying to let this last for long, so I'm hoping that tomorrow's episode will have a much needed upgrade in video quality. But for today, we'll wrap up with Stillman College softball, making not only school history, but then also HBCU history with their victory in the NAIA softball tournament. Prior to that, I think it's very interesting that Ebony Tanner has moved on from St. Augustine women's basketball in order to be the interim head coach at Elizabeth City State for their women's basketball team. But let's kick it off before we get into why I think that's so interesting. The MEAC SWAC Challenge will be nationally aired on ABC for the second year in a row. They always say the season begins and ends in Atlanta, and it does. You have the MEAC SWAC Challenge to kick off the season in week 0, and at the end of the year, you have the Celebration Bowl. Well, now, not only does the season start and end in Atlanta, it also begins and ends on ABC. This is beautiful. So this year's MEAC SWAC Challenge is going to be Norfolk State versus FAMU facing off in week 0 in Atlanta. When I look at the decision to put this on ABC, because it's not like the HBCU said, we want this on ABC, and they said, you got it. That's not how this works. Disney, which owns ABC, owns ESPN, owns a bunch of stuff, but let's focus on ESPN and ABC for the moment because these are the platforms that the Celebration Bowl has aired on. Disney made a decision last year, and I think this is a further investment, shows that they are dedicated to doing this as long as it works, of course. But that last part is the important part. As long as it works, and it showed that last year, that gamble that I believe that they took did pay off. And I want to explain immediately why I believe that this is a gamble. Not only was it a gamble to put Jackson State versus South Carolina State on ABC, I think it was a pretty sizable gamble. When you look at it from a business standpoint, take out of the just, we think HBCU should be televised nationally and that brand should be able to be spread. When you take that out and you look at it from a business standpoint, the decision to put that game on ABC was made well after Deion Sanders had left for Colorado. And not only is that important because he is the biggest name in HBCU football at that time in the year 2022. He left before 2023 turned. In the year 2022 and 2021 and 2020 in that spring season, Deion Sanders was by far the biggest name in HBCU football. So when he leaves before the 2022 Celebration Bowl, I don't know if this decision had already been made, but it for sure hadn't been announced. When he leaves at the Celebration Bowl, and then the next year, you're expecting to have that 2021 rematch, that 2021 rematch in the 2023, there's a bunch of years, so follow me. The 2021 Celebration Bowl was Jackson State versus South Carolina State. The 2023 MEAC SWAC Challenge was the same teams, and it was hyped up because it was a rematch, but it was missing the biggest star, which is Deion Sanders. For Disney to say we're going to shift this game from ESPN to ABC, our bigger platform, our bigger network, that is in some ways a gamble because you are losing a big name and it's coming off of the worst or one of the worst. I'll just say in recent memory, it's coming off the worst MEAC SWAC challenge in recent memory. So when I look at their decision, Deion Sanders is gone, and you have his team right there in the first game. The biggest name brand you had is gone because the biggest name brand was an individual. When you look at the year prior, it was bad. Let's go through the ratings, right? So last year, Jackson State versus South Carolina State, 922,000 viewers. Alabama State versus Howard in 2022, that was 485,000 viewers. Now I give them a pass because that year it was rained out. I think that it was just a long weather delay. I remember trying to watch that game. That was actually the beginning of my real football coverage for this show. Oh my God, I was sitting there bored out of my mind because they wouldn't play. They just couldn't play for so long. The game went so. I think that probably hindered the viewership, but still, the numbers are the numbers. So to go from 485 and say, all right, we're going to put this on ABC now, I think that was a gesture of good faith. I think that doing that after Deion Sanders had left was a gesture of good faith to say, yes, he's gone, but we're going to still invest. We're still going to care. The year prior, you had North Carolina Central versus Alcorn, and that drew 1 million viewers on ESPN. And that was a big deal, right? And then in 2029, because they didn't play 2020. So we're just going over the last, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. 2019, you had 350 viewers on ESPN2. So what you're seeing is, I believe that Central versus Alcorn game was on ESPN, ESPN1. So you went from ESPN2 to ESPN1. Then you were on ESPN1 for another year, even though you had to get shifted to ESPNU just because of the way the weather worked. I think all of that hurt. But you're seeing them continue to escalate where it's going to be ESPN2, ESPN1 for 2 years. And then you go to ABC for the following 2 years. ABC can be reached without cable, which means that the ability to reach is greater. Right now, I have a wider scope to work from. Maybe I had this size of people, and I'm sorry for my video guys, right? Maybe I had shoulder length, right? But now I have spread my entire wingspan for the audio. I want to make sure everybody understands the analogy that I'm trying to paint here. That's ESPN versus ABC. Yes, they're both owned by Disney. Yes, they're both very big companies. And yes, you're going to get a lot of numbers. You got 1 million people on ESPN. Technically, you have more people on ESPN as a height over the last 5 years than you do on ABC, which was just last year by about 78,000 people, right? I get that. But it's not about the actual viewership until the game is played. Until the game is actually played, how many people really tuned in doesn't matter. It's about the ceiling. It's about how many people you can have tune in. And you can have more people tune in on ABC because nobody needs cable. Every single person who has some sort of package, the basic package for anybody you sign up for contains ABC. You get an antenna, you got ABC. You got a TV, you might be able to flip over and just go on the regular live television. I know on the Roku you can't. You have ABC. So I think the ability to touch all of these people, that's what is not only most important, it's probably the only thing that's important when speaking about nationally televised games. I can reach more people. We'll see if I can actually do it. But until that time comes, it's about my reach and not about how many I actually got to reach. So as we push forward, Ebony Tanner, she's out of St. Augustine. She chose to leave, but she left for an interim position within the conference. It's a little strange to me, but let's break it down as we continue. And it's a little bit of a rant coming. I'm sorry. I'm just letting you know now as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And eBay Motors is perfect for anything you need to do with your car. If you're talking about passion, you're talking about patience, you're talking about drive, all of these things are necessary when it comes to building a team. What's the difference with your car? Right? Let me tell you about patience today, right? I was driving and my foot was a little heavy, not very heavy, but a little heavy. And I seen stuff slowing down. I was a little irritated. I looked to my right. It's a stinking copper hanging out the window, holding a speed gun. I'm like, okay, let's be patient. Let's be patient, right? Because I don't really want a ticket right now. Just a little bit of patience. Now, if you want to go to ebaymotors.com to fix up your car, get yourself the supercharge, and get yourself a little bit of speed, right? Get yourself a little bit of style. Maybe you need to fix up your car. All of these things are possible. Doesn't matter what it is. Style, speed, utility. I've been looking for that word for months. Utility. Doesn't matter what it is. All you have to do is go to ebaymotors.com, put your car into the My Garage section, and get one of the 120 million parts that's guaranteed to fit for you. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today. That's LOST, Locked On Sports Today. Go ahead and subscribe on the YouTube channel. It's the first of its kind, 24/7, all day, every day, live sports network on YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe right now. Ebony Tanner left St. Augustine women's basketball, where she was their head coach, to go to Elizabeth City State to be their head coach, except with an interim tag in front of it. This is confusing to me. This is one that I don't quite understand on either side, to be honest. On either side, I don't really get it. Elizabeth City State must be one of those jobs in the CIAA. That must be one of the jobs that everybody is desiring and just kind of yearning for. Because that's the only way I can understand it. Why would I go from somewhere where I am the head coach to somewhere where I am an interim head coach? That's the real discussion point. It's not the fact that she left within the conference, because St. Aug and Elizabeth City State are both in the CIAA. It's not about the fact that she left within the conference. I've seen Dawn Thornton do it when she went from UAPB to Alabama A&M. In a way, I kind of see Margaret Richards do it. She took the long route. She went a little scenic, but she went from Alabama A&M to Jackson State in the same time frame. And when I spoke about Jackson State and their hiring of Margaret Richards and all of that kind of poaching from the enemy, I also spoke about how they had a history of it. They've done it often. So the idea, Mo Williams is a great one right there. Eric Dooley went from SWAC to SWAC. Like, there's a lot of people. Who have not transferred. You also have had players transfer, but we're speaking about coaches. There's a lot of people who have went from one school to another within the SWAC. Maybe it was offensive coordinator. Maybe it was head coach to head coach. But we've seen relatively lateral moves within the conference before. But the reason this one makes me scratch my head is, why would you want to go be an interim head coach? There's no security in that. This is a one-year trial. This is a rental. This is a prove-it year. Coaches don't get prove-it years. They just don't happen. Why this one? Now, it would be interesting if coaches had prove-it years. Like, imagine you was like, hey, man, this dude was terrible at his first stop as a head coach. I don't know, man. Dennis Allen was not good. Now, that's a bad example, because Dennis Allen was a kind of a move up after Sean Payton. Josh McDaniels was terrible his first go round as a head coach. People be like, you know what? I don't know if he really got it. I'm going to give him a 1-year contract. That does not happen with head coaches. That doesn't. That would be interesting. That would be really interesting, wouldn't it? Prove it years for the coaches. Okay. I like that. But when you're looking at interim, in the HBCU ranks, I see interim too much, and not in the way that I've grown to know interim. I've grown up knowing it. Interim head coaches are only supposed to be because of in-season moves. This is not supposed to be, we lost the coach after the season, let's get an interim until we find a permanent. This is not, we lost our coach. We're hiring a new coach. Not from within our system. We are hiring a brand new coach, but we're going to put interim on his or her title. That doesn't make no sense to me. That just does not make logical sense to me. And that's what they did with Sister Tanner. And if you want to tell me that other colleges do it, tell them stop it too. It's weird. It don't make any sense to me. I'm not here to rant. It's late. I'm not here to yell, but the idea of an interim head coach. The idea of you taking me from being a head coach in this conference to you slapping an interim title on me. And that's her words, right? Like, this is her words. I'm not misconstruing this. Let me make sure I want to get it directly right, because Ebony Tanner said this. Ebony Tanner said this. I didn't come up with this. Let's see if I can try to find this really quickly. Oh, here goes the article. But the idea that I would come in there, because as an interim, I don't know the contract specifically, but I can only imagine that there's not many guarantees. You're an interim head coach. Why would there be guarantees? Here we go. This is her quote via the Elizabeth City State official athletic page. She says, "I am honored to be named interim head women's basketball coach at Elizabeth City State University. I want to express my sincere gratitude to Chancellor Dixon, A.D. DeBulls, and Deputy A.D. Deputy A.B. Hillard Gray for this incredible opportunity." This is Tanner speaking. This is her. Why? Why would you do that? That just doesn't make sense to me. Unless the struggles at St. Aug were beginning to kind of make her wear out her welcome. I can see that. Like, I don't know if the grass is greener on the other side, but I can see it starting to brown on mine. So maybe I do go over there and see it. Worst case scenario, I'm on more dead grass. But this one right here ain't working. So maybe that's what it is. But I can't see a reason to slap an interim title on her. She didn't come over with zero coaching experience. She's been a head coach at two schools. One was a mid-major on the D1 level. She wasn't an upgrade or a promotion hire where, she was already on the staff and we're just going to say we're going to rock with you. It wasn't that either. That happened with Kyle Jackson when Damon Wilson left Bowie State. And I guess I accepted it because, you know what? Whatever. I'll overlook it today. I'm trying to see where it comes from, because I don't understand. Any reason you wouldn't want to give her a solidified contract, just don't hire her. To me, an interim title for somebody you hired who wasn't even in your program, that just lacks confidence. That's all it shows to me. It shows an overall lack of confidence. I don't get it. I don't get it. Let's see what other things I had written down that don't apply to her as far as being an interim head coach. Because I'm not even considering it. Let's be very clear. I'm not even considering leaving my job for an interim title. That's a hilarious concept to me. The idea that I would leave my job to go be an interim head coach. What? Anyway, I can't see the stuff right now, but here we go. She didn't come from a lower subdivision either. Like, it's not like she was a D2 coach, or a D3 coach or an NAIA coach who came up to the D2 ranks and like, I'm not really sure how she's gonna translate. She was in your conference. Any reason that you were hesitant, just don't hire her. That's how I feel. I just feel like an interim title just shows a lack of confidence in the person that you just hired. But as we push forward, screw the lack of confidence. Let's go ahead and look at Stillman College, because they've made history 2 times over for their school and also for HBCUs, which we'll explore as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And Gametime is great for all your last-minute ticket deals. I always say procrastination exists everywhere except for Gametime, right? I kind of remixed that a little bit, but so don't try to do me like Jake or like LeBron, where he's like, I always say that. But yeah, Gametime. Want to go to a concert that's local? Decided last minute that you're in an area that has playoff basketball and you want to go to that? It's so simple. It could be so easy. All you have to do is go to the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. If you use the code LOCKEDONCollege, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. It's very simple. Concerts, movie, plays, comedy shows, athletics, everything in between. Just go to Gametime. They allow you to see your seats before you buy. They're so confident that you won't find a better price that if you are able to, they'll give you 110% back on the difference if you find a better price seat in the same section and row. So go ahead and download Gametime, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. As wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Stillman College wins the opening round of the NAIA softball tournament, or their first game in the opening round of the NAIA softball tournament. And with that, they've made history. This is a historic win, not only for Stillman College, but then also for all HBCUs on the NAIA level. This show is probably the only time that I care at all or enjoy history. Growing up in school, yeah, history was not my thing. I didn't really care about U.S. history. I didn't really care about Texas history. I had a year. I did have a year. Shout out Miss Huffenbein, where we did world history, and that was about a lot of conquest. And that's where I first started finding my love for Genghis Khan. So shout out to Miss Huffenbein. Shout out to 10th grade world history. But other than that, I wasn't really with history in school. That wasn't me. Math, yeah. But I come on here and I talk a lot of math. I try to incorporate math anytime I can, right? Y'all hear it. Oh, this hasn't happened in 43 years. Like English, I mean, I literally speak to you. I'm an orator. Science, once I found out I couldn't blow up stuff, it wasn't really that exciting. So look at what I bring to this show. I bring a whole lot of talking. I bring a decent amount of math for a show that's all about talking. And then also, I love focusing on history. And maybe that's because I'm focusing on present moments that are creating history that we'll be reading about 20, 30 years from now. And 20 to 30 years from now, you will always remember that Stillman College is the first ever HBCU to win a game in this softball NAIA tournament. So this is big all the way around. Just to tell you this in my history speech, this has never happened before. And it was a slow start. Coach Penfield said, predicted that. The girls were excited. This is the quote. The girls were excited when we finally got here yesterday. Some of the nerves went away. I had a feeling we might start a little slow this morning, and we did, but it's great to be here like we keep preaching. We're not here to play just 2 games, and obviously we're not now. See, it was a struggle for Stillman College in the first couple of innings, right? Through the first 4 innings, they only had 2 hits. Had a hit in the third, had a hit in the fourth, but it just, you can attribute some of that to poor pitching because, like, they got a hit in the first, or excuse me, got a run in the fourth that you could attribute to poor pitching because they had the bases loaded before they even had an out. The bases loaded before they had an out in the fourth period, or in the 4th inning. And, because they got 1 hit and a couple of batters were walked. So that's how you end up getting to the full count, but like not the full count, but the bases loaded. And they got a sac fly that gave them a run, but it just wasn't pretty. It just was not pretty for them. Then they got to the 5th and the 6th, and that's when everything turned around. 3 runs in the 5th inning. That made it 3-2. So now you already take the lead because you've been doing a pretty good job fielding. Defensively, you handled your business. You only allowed 2 runs up to that point. You allow another one in the bottom of the 5th. So you walk out the bottom of the 5th with a 5-3 lead. A 4-3 lead. Then you add 3 more in the 6th, and now you're sitting there at a 7-3 lead. So this was just a really good performance in those middle innings, and that's how they ended up winning this game because nobody scored in the 7th, and it just ended up closing out that way. But even if you look at it, 3 runs scored by Indiana Southeast, who was their opponent. There was only 3 of those runs scored. They knocked in 3 in the 5th, 3 in the 6th, if you're looking at Stillman College. So the road did get tougher. I admit the road did get a lot tougher for them. One thing they can say is that no matter what, I hate already sound like I'm doing consolations, but one thing you can say is the first tournament victory in school history, first tournament win by an HBCU team. And then also they tied the record for the most wins in a season by the school that they had last year. So this is just repeat. They've been a very dominant team. They're used to this. Let's see if they can get another victory. This is a double elimination. So after facing Indiana Southeast, they then had to go play Jessup, which was the top seed in that region, in that bracket. They lost in that game 6-3. But it's important to remember, like I said, it's double elimination. And from double elimination, now they'll be facing Indiana Southeast again. So this will be very interesting. I think that game is today. So hopefully by the time you hear this, it's already done. Or hopefully by the time you hear this, it hasn't been done. If because that means you checked it out first thing in the morning. Love you, everydayers. Now, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, all day, every single time. I genuinely appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Now, on tomorrow's episode, we'll be back. We'll be breaking some things down, so you do not want to miss that. In the meantime, in between time, until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.